Hi friends, thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi friends, welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. My guest today is Sarah Mireles. Sarah is a therapist and the founder of Sarah Mireles Therapy, who has spent more than 10 years seeing a painful pattern repeat. Neurodivergent teens get bounced between therapy, treatment programs, and medication, but the family feels stuck, exhausted, and terrified about the future. She works with clients who struggle with racing thoughts, trouble getting started on tasks, emotional overwhelm, change, uncertainty, unfairness, intrusive thoughts, compulsions, anxiety, depression, and relationships that feel too hard to sustain. Her clinical experience spans intensive hospital, residential, and outpatient settings, and she has worked with severe anxiety, OCD, autism, ADHD, personality disorders, psychotic disorders, depression, grief, loss, trauma, chronic illness, and major life transitions. As a neurodivergent professional with a neurodivergent partner, she brings both lived experience and clinical insight to a belief that is central to her work. If the home environment is not built for neurodivergent functioning, progress rarely lasts. That perspective led her to create a parent training program for families of neurodivergent teens and young adults, because she saw that parents were often the most overwhelmed people in the room, yet they were rarely being taught how to create the conditions that actually support long-term change. Through Sarah Mireles Therapy, Sarah offers individual therapy, couples therapy, individual coaching, and a training program for parents of neurodiverse teens, including teens with ADHD, autism, PDA, OCD, and OCPD. Her practice also focuses on anxiety and depression, neurodivergence, obsessive-compulsive disorder, personality disorders, and psychosis in remission. She specializes in radically open dialectical behavioral therapy, or RODBT, and exposure response prevention, ERP therapy. She integrates evidence-based techniques, including CBT, ACT, Gottman, and EFT, depending on each client's needs. So that is a lot.
Yeah, it's
awesome. It is. You've been involved in some important work, it sounds like. So welcome. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and share my knowledge. And
yes, absolutely. I have to tell you, I get a fair amount of people pinging me about possibly coming onto the podcast, and I don't actually feel like a lot of them are quite a good fit, and so I'm kind of picky about it. So I'm excited. What you were saying about the things that you help people with, I think, is something that overlaps a lot with the people that I am trying to reach and help. So I'm excited for this conversation. I think it will be a good one and a helpful one for people in all areas of life. So thank you again for being here. This is going to be good.
Yeah.
So why don't you just start with telling us a little bit more about you, where you're from, how you decided to become a counselor, and specifically focusing in on neurodivergent teens and parents.
Definitely, yeah. So originally from Chicago, Midwest. I've had quite a career journey. I was, working in public health, like public health policy, and did not like it. And it was kind of a very toxic work environment. And as a severely ADHD individual, struggled a lot with like normal work environments, and just thought, this isn't the way I want to do things. And I went to school on nights and weekends to become a therapist, and eventually moved to be closer to family in California. And just through my clinical experience, met some amazing mentors and was able to open my own private practice. Met my partner who is OCD, OCPD. I'm ADHD. And just through kind of like luck of the draw of where I was working, my clientele focused mainly on neurodivergence. So ADHD, OCD, OCPD, and other like kind of alternative ways of thinking and processing information, as all brains are different, but
Mhm.
just different ways of viewing and seeing the world of, just being neurodivergent. It's kind of just where I found my niche and my interest and the population that I now serve. So
Mm.
it's kind of a mouthful, but that's kind of where I ended up here.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. And can you, I know neurodivergent is a term that gets thrown around a lot lately. I feel like probably most people know what it is, but maybe just so that we're all on the same page, can you define neurodivergence for us?
Absolutely. And like a clinical way of saying it, it's any way of like kind of viewing, seeing, or processing the world that's not typical. So it's kind of atypical brain functioning. It's not like a lack of or like less than. It's more just a different way of processing information, processing the world. And often that comes with a lot of like sensory differences, functioning differences. And it's by no means limited to just a few diagnoses. It also can be kind of learning differences, dyslexia, uh, auditory processing differences, etc.
Mm.
So I've tried to
Okay.
keep that short, but
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you. And how is that? It's interesting as I was looking into this a little bit, I was like, okay, a lot of what people are dealing with post-concussion syndrome is are similar to these things. If they, if they didn't have, if they weren't neurodivergent prior to their injury, a lot of what they're dealing with could look like neurodivergence going forward. I'm curious if what your familiarity is with the overlap between post-concussion symptoms and neurodivergence, or is there like, is it the
definitely.
same thing? Like, how do we define that?
Yeah, so much overlap. And it's also very confusing because a lot of individuals who maybe already have some type of like neurodivergence that they were born with or have dealt with through childhood, it's often sometimes if they get a concussion, it can be very like proliferated.
Mhm.
Or sometimes an individual who is not neurodivergent when they're born may have a brain injury or get a concussion, and then the symptoms would present themselves. So often it's very confusing when an individual comes to a clinical setting to suss out, okay, was this present before or after, or is it now just being proliferated by a concussion? So it takes a really trained clinical eye and a lot of questions to understand where is it coming from. And that helps target treatment as well. But it
Sure.
definitely, concussion or no, they should be working with like a psychiatrist or a neuropsych to do the more lengthy cognitive testing to determine that as well.
Yeah, and I think even if well, and it does, you're right, it does matter the source of the symptomology. Like if you're dealing with what looks like ADHD and you've never had it before and then you had a concussion, now all of a sudden you have it, it's most likely that that is coming from that concussion, and the treatment for that would be uh different in a lot of ways than other kinds of treatment, I think, that to be effective. But I would imagine, and kind of what our conversation is going to be focusing on, is how the home can be set up to best support someone who's dealing with that. Like the symptoms, the way it presents is going to be similar, and therefore that at least the therapy may be a little bit different and may overlap in effectiveness depending on how things play out on that side, on the clinical side. But I would imagine that home environment support system, that's going to look similar, like
Mhm.
regardless of the source of the
Exactly.
neurodivergent symptoms. Is that, am I saying that accurately?
Yeah, exactly. Like, kind of no matter the source, the home environment needs to be set in a way for the teen or child to be able to succeed and gain that independent functioning back. And so, yeah, that definitely is a good way to angle the conversation.
Okay. Okay. So let's dive into that. And I do feel like this is an important conversation to be having because I think, like you said in the bio there, that there's a lot of pressure on parents who may be dealing with their own, like they're humans too. They have their own things that they're dealing with. And then they're concerned about their kiddo who's struggling and maybe they didn't know that the kid was struggling for a long time, and then there's the guilt of that. Like I've heard that so many times of like, I didn't even know my kid didn't was having blurred vision when they were reading and they didn't see things. Like there's just so much that goes on to the like onto a parent's plate and a lot of times the interventions are aimed towards the kids, and then the parents are expected to implement all like all of the home stuff, and like kids don't want to hear that. Anyway, I like my
Totally.
heart goes out to all the moms and dads out there, all the caregivers who are trying, and we just, yeah, I'm excited for this episode to offer some ideas and support and ways that they can help themselves as they're helping their kiddo. So
100%.
it's
Yeah.
important work. So I would
Yeah.
be interested in hearing what kind of patterns or less than helpful things have you found that parents of neurodivergent teens tend to fall into? Like what,
Oh my
if
gosh.
it's not
Yeah.
addressed, what does it tend to look like?
Definitely. So like so many things. And again, I want to just emphasize what you said. There's so much pressure and so many competing priorities and so much shame that parents are kind of put through as far as like what they should be doing or know how to do or having it all together. And you're dealing with a neurodivergent brain in a world that's not built for neurodivergent brains. And so the expectations need to be different. So we want to eliminate the stigma, but a lot of, kind of unhelpful patterns I do see parents getting into that's no fault of their own, right? Is one primarily is holding their teen or loved one to a standard that is meant for a typical individual with what we would deem normal brain functioning, being able to complete tasks independently at a certain time frame, at certain cadence. We're not taking into account like the differences in brain functioning and differences the brain needs in order to get to that point, which often can be a little bit longer. So, like, yeah, just expectations that are not matching up. I see a lot of kind of jumping in to fix, right? Kind of what we call that over accommodation, where parents are so worried and they don't want their teen or loved one to experience the distress. And so
Mhm.
often they'll jump in because they want to be helpful, but a lot of times sometimes it ends up kind of enabling kind of like a sense of learned helplessness. But every individual and family is different. Sometimes that is needed, and so it's not like 100% one way or the other. Sometimes
Mhm.
we do need that accommodation, and that's not a bad thing either. But sometimes if we're overly reliant on it, we're not setting up our teen for success to try things on their own. Yeah, kind of lack of flexibility, rigidity in the way things need to be done, and yeah, just many other patterns. A pattern of dysregulation, like parents not knowing skills to be able to maintain like a calm, structured home environment for the teen to be set up for success. And that's just kind of the what comes to mind right off the bat of as far as like patterns. But there's so many different patterns that we see that could be a little bit a little bit not helpful for the teen to succeed. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. I think that's so well said, and it just highlights the complexity of the situation. I feel like, and as you're talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can relate. I have kiddos who have some neurodivergence as well, so this is very relatable of this like not knowing how like what kind of expectations are appropriate for, and it's going to be individual, right? You can't just get them on a podcast and say every parent should do this. It's like so individualized to each child and what each brain, what they are capable of and what they're able to do. But it is hard. You don't want to be super rigid, but you also don't want to be so like coddling that you're enabling them to
Yeah,
not
and often you
put in
have
effort. Like
yeah, two parents that are coming in at different expectations. One's like you're being too soft. The other
yes.
one's you're being too hard and difficult and rigid, and nobody wants to see their kids suffer. But it's that too, and that not agreeing, not being on the same page that can create a lot of friction. So, we do need to work on like setting expectations and setting like concrete, smaller expectations for what can be reasonably expected. And that comes with kind of building structure and predictability,
Mhm.
which is definitely a skill that, parents can be taught. There are a lot of skills, and that's kind of where, I'm coming in with the conversation too. What can we actually teach parents to be able to create that structure, predictability, and regulation in the home?
Oh, I love that. Yes. So yeah, can we go into that approach that you have found to be helpful? So I think,
Mhm.
I mean, we could probably talk all day about how hard it is, like the
Yeah.
problems that come about from it. But I love this. Yeah, let's talk about things that you have found to be helpful. And I don't know if there's like one specific approach, or I know in our email conversations back and forth, you talked about four specific skills that really can be helpful for parents in helping provide a good environment for their kiddos. So
Mhm.
I don't know, I'll let you take the lead here. How do we want to
Sure.
discuss this?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I see help for a lot of parents and kind of just circling back just for a minute of like what really doesn't set up the home for success is kind of when the parents don't have skills themselves to be able to maintain the work that maybe their kiddos are learning in treatment program. And
Mhm.
their kiddo, like the neurodivergent brain, sometimes will require a little bit extra assistance with like reminders, memory, processing information. And so, though they're getting it reinforced in treatment maybe once a week, or if they're in a treatment program, if they come home and the same skills that they're learning in treatment are not being able to be implemented at home, and it's just going back to maybe how it was, then there might be a lot more miscommunication, a lot of more dysregulation, and just forgetting skills, forgetting what they learned. So we need in order to sustain change and progress, the approach that we need to take, it's new, but it does heavily involve parents doing some kind of groundwork to get the foundational skills that the teens need to be able to kind of implement at home. So it's nobody's fault. It's just a skills deficit on
Mhm.
all ends, right? It's like,
Yeah.
we're not taught how to do things like emotionally regulate, and we're not taught how to be more flexible or open, and we're not taught how to like sometimes maintain and sustain healthy relationships. So I'm kind of going into the four kind of principles or bullet points that I teach parents in my program and training. What I think is really, really helpful for parents to be able to know and implement at home. So one, we say it's called emotion regulation. These are all evidence-based, taken from evidence-based therapeutic approaches. Lots of acronyms, you don't have to memorize them. One's called DBT and the other one's RODBT therapy. But yeah, emotion regulation is kind of at the core of the DBT therapy, understanding how to emotionally regulate when things happen that are outside of our control, or people do and say things that are out of our control. Life is very unpredictable, and we're all just kind of craving certainty, and we're craving predictability. And when we don't get that, it creates a lot of emotion dysregulation at home with peers, with family members. But if parents don't know how to implement that at home, especially when shit happens and situations arise that we can't control or predict, the teen's going to pick up that energy and they're going to be dysregulated, or it's going to feed off of each other. And we can't absorb or learn any new information or grow if we're dysregulated because we're in
Mhm.
the fight or flight.
Yes.
I'm kind of going on a tangent, but I'm just kind of stressing that the importance of emotion regulation and the parents needing to learn foundational distress tolerance skills to be able to implement that and model that for their teens.
Can you share with us? I know obviously this this is
Hmm.
a combination of years of study and practice, so we're not
Hmm.
gonna you're not
Yeah.
gonna be like telling us everything we need to know here, but if you could
Yeah.
give some like specific examples or suggestions, or like teach us some of like little pieces at least of some of these skills so that people can have something to try to apply and work on, I think that would be so good, especially as you were talking about that, like we crave that certainty and predictability. And I think this is one of the things when I've seen this with especially I have a couple kiddos with ADHD, and I have one that has Tourette syndrome, and I
Mhm.
know that like a last minute change of plans is extremely challenging. Like it's hard for me sometimes, like, but not does it to the degree that it seems to affect these kiddos of mine. And so I like yes, if there are suggestions for how to help them and how to model it ourselves to like manage that. I love the distress tolerance. I haven't heard of that like phrase before, but I like it. Like
Yeah.
how do you recommend people handle something like that?
So, I mean, first, I'm always going to recommend like, well, parents getting additional information, learning like maybe their own therapy or skills coaching. Uh, So
Hmm.
DBT is usually what I would recommend. It's distress tolerance skills. There's so many acronyms that you can learn, like the TIP skill. So, like temperature, using ice packs to help regulate, paced breathing to help regulate, self-soothe with the five senses. But really, anything like sensorily that can help self-regulate. But it involves like being able to under being able to understand, take a step back and understand what's happening before you react. So
Hmm.
that's really kind of the foundation of DBT is being able to, oh, I'm having a really intense emotional experience and being able to observe that before acting on it.
So good.
And
Yeah,
then
thank you.
learning some DBT skills to help like self-soothe, to help regulate.
Hmm.
And we should really be self-regulating before any like major ask or conversation with our teen
Hmm.
if we want it to be effective.
Yes.
So,
Yes, that's so important.
yeah.
So good. That's yeah, definitely something that like I talk with my clients about as well. Is like, okay, if we have a conversation that's going to be stressful or an overstimulating situation we're going into, it is really important that we take some time to like get our nervous system into safety and then we're regulated prior and then work on that during and then afterwards as well. It's just it really is so important. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Uh,
So parents should, you need to put your own seatbelt on too. So therapy or, reading about distress tolerance, mindfulness can go a long way.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah. So emotion regulation, that's, and then other important tools that, right, parents, we want to equip them with tools for creating like a successful or a helpful home environment for successful children would be understanding these other foundational principles of like learning how to be radically open to feedback, being open. I think for a lot of times for our neurodivergent teens and, too, we post-concussion recovery is being scared of the unknown, or we want to have that predictability and that control. And so oftentimes we'll see our teens or loved ones kind of missing out or sitting out on new things or trying things a little bit differently because we don't want to feel failure, we don't want to feel rejection or shame or discomfort. And sometimes we don't even understand that we don't want to feel that discomfort. So we end up staying the same or doing the same thing over and over and over again. But that doesn't really set us up for success and being able to like function more independently or getting out of our comfort zone to learn new things. So when parents themselves learn how to kind of be more open and kind of being more open to about the feelings of vulnerability and shame and embarrassment or rejection or fear, the more they can kind of narrate that and share their experience with their teen or loved one, the more their teen will be also willing to change and try new things too. So I'm talking about like kind of rigidity too, that we see a lot of times with like autism or OCD or OCPD or, any type of neurodivergence where, it's we don't want to be perceived as failing or less than, so we tend to kind of isolate or miss out on certain things. I hope
Mm.
what I'm saying is kind of like making sense when you see like rigidity in behavior with our loved ones.
So with the idea of being radically open, it's this like being, I don't want to say open again, but but
Mhm.
getting yourself to a point where you're not being super rigid and doing the same things over and over again. It's like, okay, maybe there are other options out there, or maybe I can try something else. Is that kind of what you're meaning with that?
Yeah, or like, okay, I haven't done this before. Like, say a teen is really afraid of social situations or social interactions and doesn't or kind of tends to self-isolate and doesn't, or maybe really wants to learn to drive, but is struggling to like get started, initiation, like task initiation. And that could be because of ADHD overwhelm, or that could be because of just like fear of failure. It's this idea of teaching our teens that it's okay to feel failure and it's okay to feel embarrassment or shame, but it's all about taking that small next step and just kind of testing the waters. And this is it's kind of like exposure work in a sense. We're doing small exposures to just see what happens. And that's what I mean by being radically open to like allowing ourselves to experience new things.
Okay.
Experience, what
Okay.
can I learn here?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And I like that one of the open also to feedback and to experiencing negative emotions. Like I think that's something that is very helpful. I think a lot of times negative emotions are not pleasant, and that's why we tend to push them away or try to do things to avoid them. But if we're willing to experience any emotion and recognize, okay, I'm willing to feel embarrassed or whatever it is, like that will like open our capacity to feel the positive emotions as well, but also just like expand what we are willing and able to participate in our lives and expand our experience too. So I think that is very important. Like really like this radically open concept. So thank you. All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. And the more we can be radically open, right? Well, as a parent who's radically open, you're also opening up more room for connection and intimate, like
Mm,
a good relationship with your teen that can be open and honest. And that's too, like that's kind of the fourth, right, foundational skill of being able to, keep relationship at the center of a healthy life.
mm, mm. I love
So
that. That's excellent. Is that, I know mental flexibility is one of them. Have we already, did we kind
no,
of cover that
we
with
haven't
that?
done
Okay.
flexibility. No, we did emotion regulation.
Okay.
We did radical openness. Mental flexibility is like kind of the third, principle or thing that I teach parents. And, being able to be flexible is really, really important as far as like helping our teens thrive and grow into successful adulthood. Because again, right, when situations happen that are outside of our control and there's a lot of unpredictability out there. We need to be able to respond flexibly in situations, especially when recovery for like concussion, right? It's not linear. It can go back and forth. And then we can feel a lot of disappointment when it's kind of not going according to plan. But same with other types of neurodivergence, right? We may have really, really good days or weeks of like independent functioning. And then a teen might experience emotional overwhelm, flooding, and burnout from masking. And so then they'll kind of take 3 steps back. And then parents are left with, okay, what's happening? And it's kind of that understanding that we kind of need to be able to be flexible and flexibly respond like to where our teen is at, basically.
Mm,
Yeah. And, being able to be more flexible with situations, knowing that, okay, there's a lot outside of our control can help us to kind of improvise and think outside of the box. Okay, this isn't working. So let's try to do it a different way. Like just to, for one example, like with a lot of my neurodivergent teens that I work with, like for instance, something like brushing teeth might be very, very, very difficult. So maybe for one week, they'll brush their teeth for like 2 days a week, and then the next week they won't do it at all. It could be because of that, like burnout or emotional flooding. And so, okay, how can we be flexible? How can we pivot? And so sometimes we'll think outside of the box, like, okay, let's try instead of brushing your teeth, let's just chew gum, see if that works. Or maybe we can get different varieties of toothbrushes and put them in all different parts of the house. Or we can leave one by the bed. Or sometimes parents can get creative and be like, okay, maybe I just check in and I bring the toothbrush to the door once a day and see it as an option. And just kind of getting out of that rigid mindset that there's only one way to do things.
mm.
I know it's
Right.
a mouthful, but it's helpful to kind of teach parents how to be more flexible, help the teen be more flexible. There's a lot of times too, kind of rigidity happens due to like rigid expectations about how to do things
Mm.
and a lot of anxiety. So we want to be able to reduce that anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Mm.
the like concrete example there. That's I think helpful.
Yeah.
Um, cool, thank you. And how about that keeping relationships at the center of a successful life? What do you mean by that? How do you help people do that?
Yeah. So that's a core principle. It's like a foundational. We all humans, like we're all wired for connection. We all need it, whether, and we're all different. Some people prefer to just spend more alone time and they recharge that way. And that's cool, right? A lot of our neurodivergent individuals prefer that, and that's awesome. And some are just more social and prefer to have more of social interaction. And there might be a lot of like social anxiety preventing that from happening. But as humans, as kind of we all need to be part of a tribe to survive. And that's kind of what our ODBT teaches is that, kind of whether we like it or not, we do have to rely on others in some capacity to survive as a species.
Mm.
But it's important for like a healthy life to at least maintain and have at least one healthy connection with another human or individual. And so we want to make sure our teens, right, have the the capacity to maintain at least one healthy relationship. But it can be hard sometimes, like for instance, with OCPD and kind of like rigidity and expectations of others, what we expect of others, or with social anxiety, it might be really, really difficult to kind of put yourself out there and initiate or and maintain a relationship. So, like parents can help by creating a safe space for the teen to be able to like share emotions and to be able to kind of communicate feelings and needs, right? But being able to do that, it's very much a skill. We're not taught how to have healthy relationships. A lot of us need to be taught, and it's a hard concept that to be like, yeah, parents, you need to learn these skills too. How do we actually have healthy communication? How do we have healthy dynamics?
Mhm.
I think for parents, it's a challenge because the dynamic becomes a lot of like, you need to do this, or or like you're not doing this. And it becomes more kind of like a dominant, like domineering thing,
Mhm.
which really tends to shut teens down or shut off from the connection because then the teens feel like they're always failing or they're experiencing a lot of shame. And so they don't end up sharing or they end up isolating even more. So the more parents can learn how to be vulnerable themselves and learning how to communicate their feelings and staying emotionally regulated, the more, right, the teen will observe that it's safe to do so, that it's safe to actually be vulnerable and, experience embarrassment, experience shame. And parents can do that by just like talking more about their day and talking more about like, oh, this happened and I felt really embarrassed. But
Mm.
I did it anyways, and it ended up being better than I thought it would be.
Yes, that's such a good like accessible way like it's not like you have to go and take a huge class and like not that that wouldn't be helpful but like
Mhm.
it can be as simple as talking to your kid and telling them about your day and sharing what it was like for you. I think that's so beautiful and important, and you're right, we don't get a lot of instruction on how to communicate well and maintain relationships and all of these like nuanced things that are so important to everybody's well-being. Like you said, it is humans need like and healing happens in connection too for people who are
Yes.
working on recovery from an injury. Like there's so many aspects to that recovery, and having that support and people that you can count on, that really makes a big difference. So I do agree completely. This is so important, and I love that. Yeah, that example of how to like an easy, I guess it may not be easy if you're not used to it, but a very implementable strategy to start setting that example and helping your kids see that how to have a healthy relationship. I think that's so important and so good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important.
It is. It really is. Okay, well, thank you. I love those. I'm going to just like summarize them together so everybody hears it
Yes.
again. The emotional regulation, being radically open, mental flexibility, and then keeping healthy relationships at the center of a successful life. I think so,
Yeah.
so important. So beautifully summarized there. So I, why is it that symptom relief and sustainable change are not the same thing? And what actually builds, like, bridges the two for families who are navigating neurological injury?
That is a really good question. Okay, so symptom relief is when you experience some kind of reprieve from the discomfort, but it's often just like temporary. It's not long term, it's not lasting, right? But long-term relief is really, it happens when we kind of get to the core, the root of it, like we go to the foundational kind of deficit, right? If it's a skills deficit and we change our way of doing things, that can that can affect long-term change and lasting change.
Mhm.
So, right, with the deficit part, if our teens or parents are not getting like the foundation skills or the things that are needed for long-term change, then that's we can get symptom relief, right? Medication, which not saying, well, for some people, medication alone is great, but for some people, we need more, or one cycle of treatment or individual therapy may bring some symptom relief. If we're not really absorbing getting the foundational change, then we're just going to keep having the same problem.
Mhm.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. And I think that like these skills, they are so important. I feel like with the coaching that I do in relation to helping people through the post-concussion recovery, it like the the physiological piece is one of the core pillars of recovery. Like that is really important to be addressed. Like you need that actual like therapy on the physiological side of things, but the nervous system regulation, the emotional stuff, the social stuff, like all of that, like those they impact each other so much. And so I do think it's so important, and I again love that you're addressing that mental emotional piece because it does make a difference in recovery on the physiological side as well. So it really they play into each other and they do make a big difference. So it is important, and it becomes more sustainable as we gain these skills and are able uh to continue to implement them. That's what will help the
Yeah.
other, that symptom relief to continue and perpetuate. So yeah, thank you for sharing these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to hear about that home environment specifically. And I know we've kind of touched on it, but are there other things that you would want to point out about the home environment and what parents can do to help create a place where the kiddo can increase in their recovery and progress?
For sure. And I imagine it's similar with concussion recovery. It's like being able to create like systems, like predictability and systems to set their teen up for success. So that might look different for each individual's needs, right? If right memory retention or processing is an issue, right? Having like reminders, like physical reminders throughout the home, regular check-ins, maybe at the end of the day, where parents are checking in with their teen just to see, okay, let's look at the task list. What was done, what still needs to be done. It might sometimes for some individuals look like adding in a little bit of extra accommodation from parents. Parents should not be accommodating everything. But it might be like, okay, if my teen is struggling, won't take a shower, won't get started. And and by the way, I'm not like we don't want to hold them to like standards of typical like shower every day. It's more like, okay, how can we make small improvements in a way that's manageable for the teen? So, sorry, I'm backtracking. But what can the parent do to help make that starting point easier for the teen? Can I turn on the water and grab the towel so they can just then step in? Would that be an easier access point? Or around food and eating, for instance, for a lot of our kind of neurodivergent, like picky eaters, where we see R-FID or sensory processing around like textures or kind of food avoidance, what can the parent then do to kind of accommodate a little bit? You do something parents, it's called strewing. It's kind of like leaving out lots of different options and saying, okay, what I'm not telling my teen what to do, but I'm allowing them to kind of have a sensory experience and pick what they want.
Mm.
But it's kind of so lots of different like small accommodations that parents can learn from one-on-one coaching or, reading around about this stuff. And I'm trying to think, and two, just like parents having an expectation, like have a flexible expectation. We can't expect perfection, all or nothing, or what would be typical. And so a lot of times it's going to have parents doing their own work to adjust their own expectations of what normal or good enough looks like. And sometimes it involves parents confronting their own feelings of shame too. Yeah.
It's so important and well said there. How do you, and any suggestions on how someone can know what those appropriate expectations should be? You mentioned like learning about their diagnosis or whatever they're dealing with, and then I guess just working with a therapist probably would be helpful. What other ways can people know if they are appropriately setting expectations for themselves around their kid and for their kid themselves?
That is a really good question. So there are lots of different things. Listening, what you're doing now, perfect. Reading, learning, getting information about what is appropriate for neurodivergence. What is neurodivergence? What are my options? So podcasts, reading, learning more about the subject matter, learning about the particular type of neurodivergence that their loved one is dealing with, right? Again, we said, right, getting their own therapy, especially trying to get or working with a therapist who has experience with neurodivergence, neurodiversity, one-on-one coaching, learning about like behavior modification or behavior change, like as a subject matter. Support groups. There are a lot of organizations out there that do provide like support groups for parents of neurodivergent teens and children. So getting a support system, a community that understands is very, very important.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's
Mhm.
so good. And
You
as you
also
said
reach
that,
out to me for more referrals and resources. Yeah.
perfect. Yes, and we will have your info in the show notes so people can do that. But when you were saying that, that reminded me too. I know that our school district does I think it's through the school district, but maybe it's some other community health organization, but mental health organization. They have classes for parents on like how to help your kid with ADHD or whatever. Like they have, so just like look in your community. There are probably resources that are available as well for free or low cost, I would guess.
Yeah. Organize it like the regional centers in California or like Autism Speaks. Like they'll have like lots of referrals and resources.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's just so many different
Yeah,
platforms to find
yeah,
that.
that's really good. Thank you. And I do think, specifically for the parents of kids with PCS, it can be one of the challenging things about post-concussion issues is that it's not predictable. Like some days they're great, they're on a high, they can do all the things, and then they might be completely incapacitated for a day or more as well. And so like it's hard to know what to expect because they don't even know what to expect of themselves. It can be very challenging. And so I think having those conversations with your kid and your teenager like ahead of time, when they're doing okay, just you can have set some sort of like, okay, let's communicate in this way. You can tell me if you're like, I don't know, scale 1 to 10 or red, yellow, red, yellow, green, whatever, like where are you, like an easy way to communicate how you're feeling in the moment so that we can kind of base our expectations for that moment and that day on how you're doing in the moment. So
Yes.
having something like that can be very, very helpful. And then when they're not in an extreme distress state, being able to maybe review and talk about it, like, okay, what happened yesterday? Can we figure out a way to like handle this going forward? It really is so individualized and needs to be like there just needs to be flexibility. Like you said, like we'll figure it out as we go, but just give yourselves a lot of grace in the meantime because it is so hard and challenging and hard to know what to do. And then one other thought that came to my mind as we've been talking is I've heard people suggest this, and I thought it was good that like you want to give, in debating about how much help to give versus how much to require people to do on their own, the suggestion was like give them the least amount of help necessary. Like
Yes.
they do need help. They will need some sort of accommodations or whatever, but you want it to be the least that is absolutely necessary rather than like just pouring it out there, right? Like we do, which again is hard to figure out. It's an individualized thing, but I like that general concept of okay, I do want to give you help and I will help you, but I will still like I'll base that amount of help on what you're capable of still doing. I don't know. It just
That's exactly. It's scaffolding. Where
Mhm.
are we today? What can we do today? And brainstorming out with kind of brainstorming as a partnership with your loved one. What can you do? Okay, what about this? Can you start then? And then just taking it from there, like slowly, slowly. It's slower than we'd like, but
Always.
let's build, right? Slowly start kind of taking away as they build that independence and capacity.
Yeah, it's so good. And just question for you, like for the parents who are out there who are like, I am trying so hard and I try to do that and then my kid just like snaps at me and they don't talk to me and they don't want to answer those questions. Like what encouragement or advice do you have for the parents to regulate their own emotions as they're dealing with all of this themselves? Anything in addition to what we've already mentioned?
Oh my gosh, yes. For parents, like, I'd say doing your own before the interaction, doing your own self-compassion and regulation. Have your own self-compassion and regulation moment before and like any interaction. And learning more about self-compassion of like, okay, I feel anxious or I feel scared or overwhelmed, and that's right. That's okay. That's human. This is hard. And like doing your breathing work or self-soothing or whatever is going to help kind of keep you in a regulated, steady state. And when you have get into the conversation, if you're noticing that push pull, notice it. Notice the tension in your body or your chest or wherever you're feeling it. And just imagine like let go of the rope.
Mm,
You don't need to keep pushing or pulling. Like let it go. If you're feeling that pushback, okay, take a break. Come back later, right? It's never really fully as urgent as we think,
mm. I
usually.
love that actually.
Mhm.
Like the permission to just let go and come back to it later. I think that in and of itself could be very, very helpful for people and that would prevent things from escalating sometimes. Like you can't, there's not going to be a push-pull if one of the people have let go. It's not gonna, you can't continue that. So that's good. And I like that self-compassion work. That is so important. So important. So thank you. That's beautiful. I would also love to hear what you've learned from working with clients managing intrusive thoughts, emotional overwhelm, uncertainty, change intolerance. All of those things can show up in PCS recovery. Do you have any specific suggestions or help to offer for people dealing with those kinds of things?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just it's everywhere, right? Intrusive thoughts, emotion dysregulation, anxiety, racing. Like that's kind of the name of the game, especially with neurodivergence, concussion recovery. We're not working at baseline. We're at a more dysregulated state. We're quicker to be dysregulated. We may engage more with the intrusive thoughts and the rumination, and understanding that that is very human and natural, but also understanding with neurodivergence. And we're dealing too with things like maybe OCD, intenser, like more intense anxiety. We feel kind of a pull to stay there a bit longer, and we want to engage more with kind of intrusive thoughts. So understanding like, okay, this is natural, but understanding when we gain insight, it then becomes a choice for how long and whether or not we engage with it fully. So it's natural. All humans are going to experience intrusive thoughts that those are not going away, but it's about the insight and recognizing, okay, this is happening, right? Being able to observe the experience without reacting to it. So the insight work is going to be really huge.
Mhm.
Be like, okay, I'm having this scary thought, right? Do I want to stay here or do I want to maybe refocus my attention on something more useful, like a values-based activity, something that is fun or that's going to help me feel better or a self-soothe or something like that.
Can you define a values-based activity? I'm not familiar with that phrase.
Yeah. So this is kind of something you can do in therapy too. You can ask your therapist to work on what are my values? There's things you can do, like it's called a values card sort activity. What's
Mhm.
important to me as a person? What do I value in my life? What's actually important to me? It's probably not worrying about this and that, but it's probably something like creativity or romance or adventure or uh, I don't know, achievement. It just depends on each individual and thinking about what am I doing and how is what am I doing aligning with that value or not?
Okay. So doing things that are meaningful to you, kind
Yes,
of like
exactly.
an activity that will engage your mind and attention that is helping you on the
As a
things that you
human,
actually
yeah,
care about. Okay. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Thank you. And just for clarity, can you define intrusive thoughts?
Any, it doesn't just have to be thought. Any thought, it could be image, body sensation, impulse, urge that is unpleasant, intrusive, unwanted, uncomfortable.
Okay. And
That
that just kind of shows up. It just seems like it comes out of nowhere kind of thing.
it can, I mean, it can be triggered. You can have just a reminder, or maybe you're kind of just bored and your mind is wandering and it comes up. Yeah, and intrusive thoughts happen. They don't, we can't just make them disappear, but it's about if we when we have them, can we tolerate them? How do we react to it?
Hmm.
And that comes with like sometimes, right? Some it just exposure to it and healthy redirection as well. If we don't want to spend our whole day with intrusive thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you said, that observance of it, that like awareness, insight that it's happening, and
Mhm.
then choosing what to do, like how to redirect what to do. And I'm sure that therapy can be very helpful with that as well. If it's like a super intense thing that people are dealing with, then therapy can be very helpful. So
And
I think
healthy exposure work too, especially if there's kind of a trauma, as I imagine there might be, right, with a
yeah,
concussion or
that definitely happens for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, that's helpful and good to know and good to be aware of. And I do certainly like values-based activities. That's like that sounds like the therapy version of like meaningful occupations from the occupational therapy side of things. It's just funny how we have
We
the
all
same, we're
have
talking about the same thing but in different language. So
so yeah, it's
yeah,
so true. That's so
it,
cool.
it matters though. Those that really matters. That's what gives life the spice. Like it's so important. Okay, this has been so good. Thank you so much. So, is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure gets said before we close out our conversation here?
No, I mean just how people can reach me if they
Yes,
have
let's do that.
questions.
Yes,
Yeah.
tell us, and we will definitely put all of this in the show notes, but where can people find you? Where can they learn more from you?
Yeah, so a couple different ways. My websites, I have two different ones. If they want to learn more about parent training, that's parents of neurodiverse teens.com, and you'll put that in the notes, I'm sure. And then, or if they're interested in individual therapy, morelestherapy.com.
Okay. And can
Um,
people work with you if they're not, like I imagine you're in California, so it's probably mostly California based, or are there like, is there a way for people to work with you?
Yes. So if it's not in a therapy capacity, in a coaching capacity for like coach, how do I work with my teen? In a coaching capacity, I can work with people anywhere in the US, but in a therapy clinical capacity, they have to be in California.
Okay. Yep.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And are you on any of this on social media as well?
Yes. So you can follow me on Instagram at Sarah Mireles Therapy. I'm also on YouTube at Sarah Mireles Therapy. Are there any other socials? I think that's it.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Oh, I have
Perfect.
a podcast too, but that's on my website they can look at as well. I've only have a few episodes, but it's still
Okay.
something. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, we will put all of that in the show notes. I think this is just really important information for especially parents to be aware of. And again, I don't want to like add to the pressure burden of parents, but it does matter. The home environment makes a difference. And so helping themselves will help them help their kids. And I know that's what they want. So thank you for bringing this info to us to help all of the helpers out there.
No, of course, my pleasure. And yeah, you guys like kudos for all that you do, parents, and
Right.
it's a lot to carry. And so you're doing like so good by your kids by just showing up to learn. So
Amen. Well said. So
yeah.
beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And we will, yeah, get all that info out there so people can find you and work with
Okay.
you.
Sounds good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.